thank you very much for Neels for hosting this event. It's going to be amazing. You guys are going to learn so much and you're going to forget so much. We are going to recording, so everything that's being recorded and displayed up on the overhead projector here will be given to SABA to maybe edit together a little video for you guys so that we can upload it onto the SABA page on Facebook, and you can watch at your leisure from there and try and remember the information that has been departed to us today. So after Lin has done his demonstration, it's about a 3-hour demo, so please make yourself comfortable, get your deck chairs. Neels, can they bring their chairs in here? Neels?
I'm thinking. You guys want to bring your chairs in?
Yeah, I think so, because it's 3 hours is a long time to stand around picking your nose.
They're obviously bladesmiths, right?
Yeah. If you don't know how to stand around for 3 hours, yeah, you shouldn't be in the job. Shouldn't be doing this. All right, so
if you guys want to bring in chairs, you're more than welcome, but keep the guy next to you in mind, and then also keep an aisle clear. Yeah, so just people think the aisle somewhere there so that people can come in.
yeah, emergency exit, yes.
So you have got contestants. You have got 2 minutes. Get your asses in gear. Go grab your friggin' chair.
All right, so while you're grabbing your chairs, I shall speak extra loud so you can hear me from outside. Once Lin is done with his demonstration, Kevin Harvey will be doing a dagger grinding demonstration. Is that correct? All right. Valuable information for those of you who are wanting to submit guild work, because the guild requires a dagger from stock removal and from bladesmithing. So this. Yeah, the video will be up there as well, up nice and close. If you can't see Kevin because of the crowds around him, you can just watch up from the monitor there. And after Kevin is done, and after we've had lunch and we've all pigged ourselves out in the pig, we are going to have De Vet van Zyl all the way from Durban, and he's going to give us a little talk about sandmai, stainless sandmai, and tips on how that's made and something that you can do at home, perhaps, and explore the options of doing something unique and different. Once that's done, we're going to have a Q&A with Lin. We're going to set up the anvil table that we use for blade talk. And Lin, myself, Heather, Kevin, all the ABS Mastersmiths and all the ABS Journeyman Smiths on the continent will be behind one table for your pleasure to ask us questions. Although I get a feeling Neels and I are just going to... Yeah. Bladesmithing questions only, yes.
Nothing personal.
Yeah, and I think Neels and I will just sit there and listen. We're officially the least qualified people at that table. All right, so right now I'd like to thank Lin very much for coming, and I'm going to hand it over to Lin. He's going to take the show from here until lunchtime. Thank you very much, Lin, for coming. We really appreciate it. This is a unique and special experience.
Thank you, Stu. Appreciate it.
Round of applause for Lin, please.
All right, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask the guys that are standing to just step back. Now this is now the drawbacks with the chairs. You're giving up your nice standing position. So just the guys that are standing, if you turn around and you see a chair behind you, just go stand behind the chair.
And one last thing, this is Neels's workshop and Neels's rules. If there's any problem or any situation, if Neels shouts at you, just do what he says. Okay? Within reason.
No.
Sorry? Yes, that's the other thing. Hands up who hasn't come from within 60 kilometers driving distance. Yes, thank you very much for the guys who have traveled, especially our Australian friends. Thank you very much for coming and visiting and stealing Lin's knife course from us. And I hope that we give you a good representation of the knife making community within, not just knife making, bladesmithing, because this is SABA, obviously. And everybody here are bladesmithing enthusiasts. Just also another thing I'm interested, how many are full-time knife makers? Can I have a show of hands? Okay, so not that many. Sorry? How many are beginners? You've got 2 years or less under your belt, Neels. So yes, so there's a lot to learn today. So guys, pay attention and enjoy. Thank you, Lin. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Stu. And thank you, Neels, for hosting the event. I really appreciate being invited. And I also want to say a word of appreciation to Kevin and Heather Harvey. They've hosted us for a week, and or at least a week, maybe close to 2 weeks now. Time has really flown. We've enjoyed introductory class with the Australian group, and I can, believe it or not, I can name every single one of them. But I will apologize quickly if my South Arkansas accent is confusing to you. But anyway, we've gotten past it so far, so I think we're going to be just fine. The X-Rhea knife, you've probably heard a little bit about it. You might have seen some pictures. I do have a few examples here. In fact, one of them is just cooling off from work this week because we made it at the Heaven Forge. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of information about how I started, the different stages that we go through to arrive at the complete knife, and some of the pitfalls and dangers points that you'll come to along the way. I want to emphasize that it is forging a knife. It's not just a blade, it's the entire knife, because the guard and the handle is included in it. So there's some geometry that goes on here that's a little subtle if you're not really looking closely, but it's my intention that this knife have some features that are important to its design. And a little bit about why I started making these things. And it's not that I just began or dreamed up and just began to make the design. It took me about 3 years to, I'll use the term perfect, although that's a loose term. It has some things about it that I really like and I think that are worthy as far as design is concerned. It's strong. It's a great exercise in forging. And if you want to forge or you already forge and you want to end up at the end of a day of enjoyable work, challenging work, then this project will allow you to get that practice, meet that challenge, and at the end of that day, you probably won't have just a piece of scrap to throw in the bucket. You'll have a complete knife. And that's my goal, is to share how that you can take one piece of material, one piece, that's all you got, and your tools, your simple tools. This was designed with the basic workshop in mind. A forge, an anvil, and a vise, and a few little simple tools. I mean, we all have our tongs. That we're going to use some of those too, of course. But everything that we use are commonly available in a simple workshop. And that was my goal, was to create something that could be made in a simple shop without the CNCs and the surface grinders and all that. Those are all great, and believe me, I make those type knives too. You may not believe that looking at what I've got, but I do make those kind of knives as well. Conventional, highly polished, highly finished knives, and I enjoy those. But today we're going to focus on the X-Rhea knife. Now, for a knife this size, the blade's probably 3 5/8. I'm using American numbers. The measuring system, 3 5/8. The overall thing's going to be about 8 inches long, 8 1/4 maybe. So somebody may want to translate that into millimeters. At one point I had some of these numbers down.
115.
What's that?
115 millimeter blade.
115 mil blade. But this doesn't take much material. There's not much volume when it's all said and done. So what we're going to do is get that forge hot, and we're going to heat up this piece right here. Now you'll see that this is just welded onto the end of a mild steel bar, but that right there is about a quarter by, in our measuring system, it's about 5 inches long. 5 inches long. So that's all it really takes to make a knife this size. Now this one may work out a little smaller because I think the starting stock on this particular one was just a hair thicker. So we'll get it hot and get started. There's some numbers, though, I do want you to try to remember. When you start with a 5-inch bar, and that's a good number to start, by 6 mil, I believe that is, 1/4 inch. Divide that piece up in your mind. Divide it up into 10 parts. 10. Okay, we're going to separate or apportion off 4/10, and that's going to become what I call the tail or the handle section. We're going to do that first. So this style knife is where you get to change some of the rules. We've been taught to put the point on the bar, pull the choil down, put the bevels in, straighten, get that right, and then bring the tang and ricasso out the back, cut that off and all that, which is great. I still do that with the conventional blades, of course. But with this knife, it's just required. I mean, you'll find that if you try to do it any other way, it's just going to get out of hand. You're not going to be able to do it. Believe me, I've made all the mistakes. I have, and I've got a scrap pile about that tall, and a lot of wasted steel. But what I want to try to do is show you my way of doing this, and I really think it's the right way. But we're going to get that piece hot, and I'm working this at a high heat. And bear in mind that I'm speaking from the point of view of a blacksmith, because again, the anvil, the vise, the forge, and usually I use a coal forge, but we got those 3 main items that we're working with. So we're blacksmithing now with this knife. So I'm going to be working at a high temperature, even though we are using basically tool steel. And I normally don't wear gloves at the museum because the coal forge, it operates a little different. It's much easier and cooler as far as your hands are concerned. But this thing's coming up to heat really nicely. It's at a good color. And remember, I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm not going to measure it, so I want you to just follow along and see how this works. Okay, so bear with me. I'll point out as I step this down, half on, half off, right here on this edge, how this is going to work. So I'm eyeballing 4/10. 4/10 of that total length, and it's going to change quick because we're drawing it out. So you can see that we've just stepped off a little less than half of that material. There's the weld, the arc weld. So that material is going to be the tail. So let's get that hot and we'll keep working on it. It should draw out, in a knife this size, we want it to be about 8 1/4 to 8 1/2. Now that one was 8 3/4 to 9. A little bit bigger. So you can write these things down, check your how it translates over into millimeters, it's going to be the same thing. Its principle's the same. So, as you probably know if you've had any blacksmithing experience, when you're forging down a wide piece down into something that's more square, you're going to have these tendencies to get these little fish mouth or cups in it. Well, we want to try to avoid that. So we work at a very high heat, whatever the steel will tolerate. We're going to work at that heat for a while. The forge is really nice. This forge is really doing good. So you swap back and forth. You're just hitting it light. I refer to it as 70-30 because I'm hitting more down and less on the sides. But you have to give it that little bit of attention so that you don't get those cups. And that's just stored material. It's going to come way out here. Yeah, it's fine. If I need to raise that anvil, I'll just dig me a little hole. Just do like. I'm resourceful. We'll allow questions here in a little while, but first of all, let's go through some of this. Now I'm just going to show you that you just bump it down and just kind of put things back into place. And it's starting to look kind of like a Joe Kiesler knife. But that's, and by the way, he makes a great knife, but that's not what this one's going to be. It's not going to be a Kiesler knife. And any of these designs, Joe Kiesler's, this X-Rhea, and in fact, other makers are making variations of knives that are totally forged. All it is a matter of is getting control of your process. And what I'm trying to share is that there's a process that is key, and it leads to the end product. And if the end product you're not happy with, adjust your process. It's kind of like cooking, baking a cake or anything. If something's not just right about it, you know it. Will you keep doing it the same way? No, you're going to get the same results. We all know that. Okay, I've got it was getting a little sharp, so I found me a little round spot and pushed against it while I bumped it, and it rounded that up. If you start getting sharp corners, just stop and address the problem right then, because if you go in and out of the fire very much, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get some burnt places that go in. They're called shuts, and it'll burn its way right in there. So you just, if you can fix it on the anvil, do it. If you have to go to a round file, do it. But get that shut out of there. All right, now let's draw that tail on out. So I'm going to be concentrating on this for a second, but just watch how it moves. The first heat won't be so dramatic. It won't be, because I'm just kind of squaring it up. And by the way, I want you to notice something else too. The hammer I'm using is common hammer that anybody can have, can find, can buy, or make. It's not big. It's probably, well, we use pounds. That's probably not even 2 pounds. It's pretty small. I use one slightly bigger than that normally, but one of the reasons I picked this one is so I want everybody to see that you don't have to have a big 5-pound or 6-pound hammer to work on some of this stuff. It's just hammer technique and heat control. I wonder if I might get a bucket of water. Not drinking water. I don't want to drink out of the bucket. Thank you very much. Now I'm just going back up around this area and kind of getting it somewhat in shape. Then I can pull that out. Okay. I was thinking that maybe that handle, if it ever starts getting hot, I'll have a place to cool it. Okay, it's getting hot. Now this time I'm going to come to the horn because it is like a fuller, a bottom fuller. I'll just use my hammer face. I could use the cross peen. Either way, it's okay. But I will use the horn. It's got plenty of mass. This little thing's not going to go anywhere. So I'm getting set. And just rotate on the horn. Now it's twisting a little bit and getting crooked, but that's okay. And actually, you can keep it hot with a hammer like this. You can keep it hot enough that that you don't have to go back into forge as often if you really wanted to. But I like going into the forge. Besides that, it wears me down. I need a break. But it's good. Forge is good. So we'll take a short break for an advertisement. Okay, here we go. Now you can just kind of, it's not a heavy hammer, so it's not hard to do. You just speed it up. And we're using, I may have failed to mention that. We're using pardon me, I can't think, but with 1 or 2 brain cells, I think that's 1085 steel, which is so close to 1084, which is what I'm used to working. I can't tell any different. It's essentially the same thing. A simple steel. It has 0.85% carbon, 85 points, roughly, give or take. That's industry standard, allows for a little fluctuation there, a little variance. I like the 10 series myself because it is simple, and since it doesn't have any real alloys, I don't have to worry about so much about air hardening or any issues with that. You'll notice that when I'm pulling this out, I'm kind of being careful out here on the end. That's a little piece of stored material that's going to, when it comes around, it'll be the guard, finger guard. So if you just treat it like the rest of it, then you're going to end up with a real flat, something looking like a spoon, and you're not going to want to have that there. It's not comfortable. It's 1085. It's written on there. I see it now. It's written on the bar. Thank you, Kevin. He has to put left and right on my gloves, so I know which one to wear. So we'll bring that end on out a little bit and thin it just a little. From time to time, it's nice to do a little straightening. And I mentioned earlier that I generally don't measure these things, but there's a lot of times I will. I think I can gauge this one pretty good. Is it real handy? I want to point out something too on this board. There's some pictures I got of the same blade, same knife, and I've got some arrows pointing at different sections. That way it gives you an idea about what my intention is. So I'm looking to get a horizontal cross section . So I've pretty well got my target size right here. It's wider this way than it is this way. Now I'm going to do the same thing, right? Just back of that little teardrop thing right there. And when that's the right size, and that's the right size, and all that in between has 4 straight planes, then all you can have is a taper. You've got to taper both ways. This will be smaller than that by just a small percentage, maybe 20%. So if that's, well, let's say 6 mil by, right there? No, 8 mil by 6 mil. And this out here is just slightly smaller, but it's in the same cross section. It's still horizontal, still wider this way than it is tall. Okay, because your hand's going to be bearing on that. That's your handle. I just want to emphasize that. So, but that may raise a question: how are we going to transition from that width to the blade? Are we going to do that in a way that's that looks and works right with forging. Okay, we'll get to that, but I want you to be thinking about that. How can we transition from handle to what we would call a ricasso and blade? And I got a picture over there. I might have to set this aside so it won't burn, just to point out those pictures. Okay, it's getting kind of skinny right here. That's what I want. And then we got some thick, lumpy, kind of hammered up, marked. And so we'll smooth that up and see what we're left with. If we need to, we'll pass these pictures around, or you can come look at them closer after we get done. But I think you'll get a better understanding by looking at the photos. Now, since I'm heating that inside middle area of that tail, he's got some. Thank you, Neels. That's where I want it to be hot. So we're good. Now I'm just working a section at a time, like 2 or 3 inches while it's hot. And I'll come back and kind of flatten it. Now I'm just going to leave that sticking up like that because I want you to emphasize that I'm working this area. That can do what it wants to do. Because once I start my taper and I see that I'm smaller here, then I'm on my way to there. So I just got to blend it. Some of this stuff I'm telling you, you can relate to making tong reins or some other objects that you make. The squaring, the rounding, how you square first and then round. Well, this is not going to be round, but it won't quite be square. It's going to have chamfered, what I call chamfered corners. Now I'm going to work a little farther out. If I see a lumpy place, I work on that, and it all works toward my end goal, which is having a taper. Right now, you can kind of see a taper. It's smaller there than there, and it's a little smaller there than there. Now you might ask, well, why does it got to be tapered? It's much easier to just draw out a square. But in actuality, that brings me to a point I'd like to make when it comes to designing something. You can overbuild things. A grinder can be overbuilt, but I like an overbuilt grinder, blade grinder. But a knife, if you overbuild it, you're carrying that thing around with you all the time, right? It's going to get heavy if it's overbuilt. So sufficiency is what you're looking for. You want it to be strong enough to be serviceable for the purpose that object was designed for. So if you overbuild this or any other knife, then what you're doing is making it heavy. If it happens to be a knife that needs to be heavy, well, that's one thing, but these don't. Now I'm going to work out here and smooth that up a little bit. And you'll probably see that I'm working at a little lower heat now. It does this. That scale will pop right off. It starts cleaning up, and you're really planishing the surface. And planishing is a blacksmith technique. You probably know about it, but I will bring it out. That's probably at least 8.5. Okay. Relatively done on that part. Did you have a measuring rule? Oh, okay. All right. Let's see what we can do. Almost 8. Almost 8. One thing to bear in mind, when that's flattened, it'll get longer. And when we start working back here, it'll tend to get a little longer this way. Okay, so we're going to get to 8.5 when it's all done, all said and done. All righty, let's start preparing for that other part. Now this is going to be important. Let me set that aside for a minute. Let's just talk for a second. I'd be glad to do that, yeah. Okay, be careful with this thing because it's kind of sharp. Seriously, it's pretty sharp. We sharpened it. And Drew cut part of his beard off with it, so we know it's pretty sharp. And he's got a red beard, so it's a tough knife. Y'all look at it, and you'll see we're going to be working on this part right here. We're going to start form this little, I call it a standoff. Standoff. It stands off from the rest of the knife. It's got a tenon. It will have a tenon that protrudes out on about a 45-degree angle from the flow of the knife. From the flow, it points up on about a 45. So let's just start here. If you can, be careful. Passing it, use good judgment, etiquette, whatever that is. Be careful. Don't anybody want to get hurt. And I've got some different styles here too. But back to this. There's some curves that are taking place when it's done. These curves right here are going to be working together. Let me get to where everybody can see. These curves right here are going to be as if they are swung on radius from a point that's out here somewhere. You've got the smaller radius and a little bit bigger radius. You follow what I'm saying? The funny thing is, though, until we forge that blade bevel, it's going to look kind of leaning forward. And then when we forge that bevel, it's going to pull back. And if we pull it back a little bit too far, that's okay. We could file that right out and clean those curves up. But the curves, to me, are important. You've probably seen examples of this on the internet, and you may have tried it yourself, and you may have had trouble getting this to flow. It might have some kinks or some jerks in it, some flat spots. Well, that's where that taper that I've been talking about comes into play. All other things equal, if you've got a tapered piece and the heat is even, it's going to flow really nicely. That's very, very important.
So for you guys that are not following Lin on Instagram, his handle is @Lin Rhea. @Lin Rhea on Instagram, and Lin did an entire post of this, the entire process in detail with descriptions. It's about 2 months ago.
Yeah. It's Lin, LIN_RHEA. And if you can't remember how to spell my last name, it's the last 4 letters of diarrhea. Does that help? That's guaranteed. Okay, so where are we? Okay, we're gonna pull. Okay, now Stuart, where are you? If I say anything that causes Stuart to make a comment, y'all, it's on him. It's not me, because some of these things are going to get a little bit tricky to be able to describe without being kind of off color. Okay, we got a tail. Well, just under the tail, we're wanting we want to make we want to take that 1/2-inch bar, and we're going to make a little bit of a round curve in it. Okay, so let's get that hot, and we're going to use the vise. We're going to hold it in the vise, and it's important that we understand that the vise is going to be about this level. So we're going to stick this much up, straight up, basically straight up, maybe leaning a little bit like that out of plumb. That's plumb, that's a leaning a little bit. We got about 1 inch of material up. We got a good grip with the vise. We don't want to stand on the vise. We don't want to do that. We don't want to pinch a bad place into what will be the blade. It's okay. It'll work. I assure you, because we're going to get it super hot. So I'll be right here at this vise. And again, common materials, just a piece of scrap, 1/2 inch. That would be 12 mil. And then some probably 8 mil round, just something like that. Start with, I'm getting all my ducks in a row. So, Stuart, that was for you. I want the part that I'm going to be working on to be hot. So we go to get everything ready, the jaws and everything ready. I will try to face you while I'm working. Here we go. You work fast, but you don't want to work so fast that you can't get the job done or that you mess up. Okay, I may have to re-grip. I'll heat it back up. It's okay. I'm getting to know this vise. We'll go back. I think that weld may not hold either, but if that weld breaks off, we'll just keep going. I've done it before. No problem. I'll just tighten up just a little more. I got to figure out what I can get away with this vise. It's that way any shop you go to. It don't matter. My shop's the same. But we want to sink it down in there pretty good. We actually want to upset some material that sticks out to the side. Good. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Let me just straighten it up a little. The weld may come loose here in a minute, but that's okay. I want to show you where we need to be at this point. This has a curve that has, let's see, You get where somebody can see. Oh, there you are. We've got an upset on each side. And that material that's upset is going to eventually be pulled out for that standoff, if you follow what I mean. So we're going to get it hot again, and we're going to put another one right here on the anvil. Use a small bar. If we need to move to tongs, we will. No problem. You'll see immediately, as soon as I tap this into the bar, you'll see exactly where we're going with it. Let me do one quick thing. I'm just going to straighten this a little bit. Daniel, would you help me? Can you help me? Would you do something for me? Okay. I'm gonna hand it to you, and I want you to lay that right across there. In my shop, I've got holdfasts and things that I've made to work in the pritchel and things. Those are real easy to make and use. I didn't bring one, but it's not a problem. I got a holdfast right here. My name's Daniel. Just hold it right there, right here, with the tail down. Okay, got it? Just flat. I'm going to give you the cool end. Okay, right there. No, tail down. Like that. Okay, here we go. Now I'm checking it. I'm looking at it and making sure that I don't need to make any adjustments. So we're just going to stop and look now. Okay, you can pick it up. Thank you, sir. I may need you back in a minute. You can sit down for a second. Rest. You see where we're going? Okay. Another point I want to make is that what we're really making is a preform. We're making a preform of the entire knife. And it's going to look like the preform, and we don't want to worry a whole lot about the way it's going to look at this point. We want to worry about what how the preform looks. The preform needs to have that point generally on a 45. Can you imagine if it's leaning a little bit too square? We can hit it right there with that little bar again, and it'll start leaning back this way, and vice versa. But at this point, I'm going to take some of that material that's pushed up in those little curvy lumps that are around those strike marks, and I'm going to push those in the right direction. Is that? I'm not sure what that is. Thank you. Tastes good. Okay, now notice this. The tail is that way and pointing this way. So we've got a cross peen, and I'm flushing my hammer with the edge of the anvil. Now, I turn it this way. Weird as that sounds. And just hit it with the face of the hammer. So what are we doing? We are doing two things. We're starting to thin this to get to the blade thickness. The ricasso and the blade are going to be on one plane, one parallel plane to begin with. And we're pulling out that material that way. So I'm going to go back to the vise and go here, and we'll come back out. Daniel will help me with this, and we'll just keep offsetting material and pulling it this way. That's how you get that to grow out there. You're pushing material in and getting it in a position to pull out that way. Here, here, that way. Here, here, that way. So you just keep repeating that until that is out there. Any quick questions about what we're doing now, right? This exact part. We don't want to get off the subject too much. Okay, we'll just keep going. Remember to take your hammer. And also, I do find that there's you're going to reach points in this process that you're going to kind of say, well, that thing's not looking right. I'm going to throw it away, cut it off, and start again. Go ahead and I'm encouraging you to go ahead and have faith in it. Keep making the adjustments like you normally would on any project. And you will most likely overcome any problems. You see, I'm not wailing on it like with a sledge or something. And when it starts cooling off, stop. A little at a time, just a little at a time. And you might ask, why ½ inch under that tail and the smaller one on the bottom side? Well, I tried that, and the curves don't work out right. So I tweaked my process. I changed my process a little bit, and I ended up with a much easier and better looking end product. So I'm trying to share with you and give you the benefit of the work and the mistakes that I have made on it. Just a second, Daniel. I'm going to straighten this out. We're going to be coming off of this bar about the right time it breaks anyway. That's not a problem. So it's holding as good as any pair of tongs I'm going to be able to use. You ready? We'll do the same thing. Okay, now go back and find my bar. If you're not using gloves, the device will warm up and these bars will warm up, but I don't really feel anything in them at the moment. Okay. Good. And that hump right there, not a problem. This'll. Now I'm kind of pushing toward Daniel just a little bit too with my hammer, you'll see. And I'm just lightly tapping it. I'm just going slow and careful. Thank you. You see it's a little more well defined. I haven't even pulled it out yet. So that was 2 times to the vise and 2 times to the anvil. And it might take 3 to get it long enough, because you've got to be long enough to file back to leave a tenon right there. So if you fail to remember that, your standoff is going to be too short, and it might look a little bit crowded right up in that curve. A little too tight right there. So again, hanging off the anvil. And why am I going on this angle like that and here? Let me point that out. I will in just a second. While I'm hot, I've got to strike. You'll see it easily once I point it out. You start to see a preform taking place, right? You can also start to see how the handle is remaining wide and this is getting thinner. Can you see that? If I laid the entire piece up on the face of the anvil and was striking it the way I was just doing, that handle is going to get thinner. So, and also in the light, you might can see that little angle beginning. That angle beginning. It's in the drawing over here. I'll go over there real quick and show it to you. Well, we can see it, the angle, but the transition from handle to the blade, and this one here says area that is flat and parallel. Well, all that area that's in front of that angle is flat and parallel. That's your blade thickness. But I'm setting it up for that transition is what I'm really doing. We'll go back to the vise. So again, if it's Saturday morning and you're got a morning to kill, it's cold, rainy or something, this is a great project to get some practice at forging. See that made a little bit more difference, and we haven't even gotten to the other part yet. I'm just barely working on the underneath there. We'll get it hot and we'll do that again. How about that? Could you was that getting too hot for you? No problem. Okay. If we start seeing smoke, I know you're just being proud. Yeah, we can do that. We'll just go ahead and do that. And by the way, whenever you're quenching something like that and you're going to quench the handle, grab it up way past so that this distance won't come back and reach your hand. You may accidentally grab the edge of that and it swing or push or something, and if it's a big piece especially, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to be with that lack of control. You want to stay in control. Did everybody get to see that knife, or is it still going around? Okay, no problem. I don't need it. I just wanted to make sure everybody's still getting a look. You ready, Daniel? Here we go. I'll do this. Good. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to lean it that way. There's very little about this that has to be struck really, really hard. It just reasonable hammer blows, reasonable size hammer. The big thing is stay with the sequence and try to be as accurate with your hammer blows as possible. I'm leaning the bar against it. I just want to loosen just enough to grab it. Ready? It's nice to have a little help. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. I'm getting kind of set before I smack it. I got it. All right. See that you can see that actually it comes in and gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit bigger even. So you can see the movement that you can accomplish with that. So let's clean it up just a little bit. I'll show you something here. If that is, I'm gonna be hanging it off right there, and I'm gonna pinch that with this just to kind of show how you can parallel that. You can come back with a heavy set of tongs and get a grip like that. Pinch it back into parallel. It's not absolutely imperative, but it's just pretty handy to do. Do that a couple of times. You could even do it over here by the fire where you won't lose any heat. A lot of the blacksmiths I know will have them a small mini anvil. It might be a sledgehammer head laying on the forge. And whenever they're making a small weld or doing some small little operation, instead of walking from the forge over to the anvil, they'll have their little setup right there close by with a little bitty hammer, and they'll do it right there, and they'll go back in the fire, and it saves all that heat loss. Can you see how it tapered right on out? Good. All right, now I'm just coming back up to heat, is all. Every time I get a chance, I leave it in the fire to stay hot. Now, and I'm working now to make sure that my preform looks right, looks. I recognize it. In other words, it's like driving somewhere. You recognize that intersection. That red light, stop light. You know where you are based upon how it looks. I'm gonna borrow this punch. We're gonna use that punch again, but I'm gonna use it like it's a small horn. It's good. There we go. Now we're going to cut that off. There it is.
Sorry, so you want to take a bit of a break?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. It's not a problem. Well,
figure a way out to get it out again.
Okay. Now I want you to notice something. this is going to appear, I promise you, it's going to appear too short. And you're going to say, that's not long enough for a blade. Remember that this is going to be cut kind of square, sort of, and those corners have got to go somewhere, and so does the thickness. All that thickness can be drawn out. It'll be proportionate to the handle. The good thing about forging the handle tail first, if you end up with a little bit too short of a handle tail, and you say, man, it's only 7 3/4 inches long. I wanted 8 1/2. Well, what do? When it comes time to cut it off the main bar, cut that just a little bit shorter, and you'll get a proportionate blade size to the handle, and you'll just have a little bitty neck carry or something like that. And say, that's what I wanted to begin with. Okay, so now I'm gonna set that over here. We're gonna let me cool these off. We're gonna get that blade, what will be the blade, we're gonna get it hot. Use just a little bit longer reins on the tongs. See if we can get that. See if we can get that out of there, please, sir. Just for. Oh, look at you. Leave it, it's okay. It's okay. Can you do this? Can you do something? Let me show you.
Oh, look at that.
Drive it this way. Let it rest on these hooks. Okay. It's all right. No problem. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, it's going to be important to reach and grab as close to the blade as possible up on the ricasso to keep that thing from flopping around. Now watch. So it's already starting to come to a point, and that little cut, as long as I kept it in the middle whenever we use the cutter, is right on the tip. That should go away any problems from that should go away in the profiling of the blade. And if I see it, if I can see it, then I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of it anyway. I don't like that. But so we swap from tongs to tongs, not a problem. If this was a coal forge, burning coke, it would be a little less aggressive of a. Was there a question? Okay. I just want to be sure. I'm hearing this forge here. It's kind of... I do have a picture of the preform part of it and the up close of it, and we're starting to get to that general shape. Drawing out the blade. Now you'll notice that I'm holding it on an angle, and that angle represents that angle of that little shoulder, because if you just hold it any old way, you're going to wash that out and you won't have it any longer. And that, it kind of, it goes against the design, as it were. So you're just going to forge a blade like you would any other blade now. Just forge it on out. Except for one thing, I like to leave my bevels down a little on the side of the blade, because if I want to leave some black forge finish along the spine, then I can grind up as far as I feel like I need to. If I forge all the way to the top like I would a conventional blade, then I've got no choice. I've got to go out the top. Each time that you lay it on the anvil, you just have to pay close attention to how you lay it there. And I'm just trying to get it parallel. I'm not forging bevels yet. You can see how that and that are pretty close to the same. We'll get there, though. We will get there. What time is it? What was that? Okay, so it's getting longer and narrower, longer, narrower. But we're approaching the blade thickness that I like for a knife this size. It's getting, it'll be quite a bit thinner, but if you don't allow a little bit of reduction for the next couple of steps, you may end up too thin. Or too thick, even. I mean, whatever the case might be, you just need to keep foremost in your mind that you're working toward a blade thickness right here. And these jaws on this vise, they cover up a lot of the piece, but I'm going to try to now I can start with the bevels, but I'm laying the blade over kind of on a little bit of an angle. It's half of the total blade bevel angle. So if I've got, say, 10 or 12 or so degrees on each side for a total of 20 to 24 degrees, well, then I want to split the difference. The blade is jacked up like that, and the hammer is even further. Okay? That's the total angle, maybe, and this is half the angle, if you follow what I mean. Now, grinding and stock removal, you're not pressed for time so much as you are here, wasting heat, and especially a situation like this. I want to get it done right, but I'm having to just judge by my past experience. So you'll get to where you can do that. It's not that bad, not hard. Okay, let's look at it. This is where I've been hammering. Can you see that? That bevel? And the anvil is on this side. Can you see how the anvil made that imprint? Actually, the anvil is smoother. Naturally, it's made up of a flowing, resisting. It leaves that kind of an impression on it. Whereas the hammer is a bunch of different marks that just try to blend together. But that's so if you were going to have a piece that one side in particular needed to be smooth, which side would your last pass be on? The smooth side needs to be on the anvil. That's your last hammer pass on that to smooth it up. Now on this, they're both equal, so it's not going to help much on this. But say on the back of this here, that's the way I do it. I smooth that up right here because that's where your hand's going to be. The heat's going low, and I'm going to do a kind of a planishing pass. It's pretty straight. This is something I think is important. Let me cool some tongs first. Okay, right here, it's tapered from here to here. Okay, I want a little section here that's somewhat parallel. So it's not right now. So my goal now is to do that, is to get that parallel. So we'll go back in the fire and see what we can do with that. I'll start it on the anvil, of course, but I may go to that vise and let that vise. I'm not cold, thank you. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. You got it? Yeah. I may have messed up.
You can see how highly skilled I am.
Yeah,
I make a brilliant top stand.
thanks. Lay it over somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to just come back along that spine and the ricasso. And put just a flat down through there. Now, the next heat, we're going to go to the vise. So, right there, please, sir. Thank you. And this little angle, I'm going to put the jaws of the vise right there and let the parallel jaws squeeze right there and define those little angles. So we got to get pretty hot. Okay. Now, flatter on the edge of the anvil is just fine for that, too, if you don't want to use the vise. Let's do that one more time. Right now, the tail is really sharp. It's kind of rectangular, but the corners are kind of sharp, and I don't really want that to be that way. So we'll come back to that. Right there. Whoosh. Okay, good. You see where the vise jaws darkened it? And it's starting to get a kind of it's actually imprinting in it. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm going to show that. Right now there's some scale on it that's going to have to be removed. But you can see, thank you, sir. You can see that I'm going to get this cooled off too. That thing's really hot. I'll use that for a pointer. There's the top of the jaw and there's the bottom of the jaw. So that's good. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Now I'll take everything else and smooth that out from there. That gave me my look that I want. All right. I'm through this, so I'm going to put it down. It's and we can turn, yeah, that's perfect. That's, the blade itself, the profile, if you get it close, you're going to profile it anyway on the grinder. But the rest of this, now is the time to fix it if there's a problem. You're forging it, and you can't hardly go back. It's going to be very difficult to do. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to blow your eardrums out. I'm doing is straightening up here. I'm not forging. I'm just doing some straightening. Okay, so we're getting close. I'm going to work from here back now. Okay, where's my tongs? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Can y'all hear that? I hope not. All right, so we're going to chamfer those corners on this handle. I'm hitting it very light where it's hot, and I'm hitting it a little harder where it's not as hot. It actually looks narrower now that I've chamfered it. It looks narrower than that. But when this is chamfered, it'll follow right through. It'll look better. That brings up a little point. The sharp corners, that's what your eyes go to. And that's how you can know when you got straight lines. You forge it square, forge it out. And then if it's got to be round or octagonal or something, then you do it then. Because your eye can see those sharp corners really easy. But it's harder to see when it's rounded. The light does not reflect as sharp. Okay, the spine of the handle is down on the anvil now. Straightening. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that, what's called a beaver tail, the guard. I had to call it platypus tail for the Australian guys. I wanted them to be able to understand it. For this to flow, even though it's a little tiny piece, it's got to flow right. So I want it to be hot. If it's up in the yellow heats, it'll flow better. So you might remember that. Anything you got to flatten, if you're drop forging a part or anything like that, it'll flow much better. Besides that, it'll cool off too quick if you don't. So I want to emphasize something, that this taper follows through that tail, that beaver tail. You don't want a spoon. We're not making a spoon on the end of it, or a little thin step down. No, it's okay. The reason. You want that to be strong enough to withstand any pressure. You want it to be comfortable. Plus, you're going to have to heat treat the thing. So when you're hardening the blade, if that is too thin, it may air harden. And then what's going to happen when you're out using the knife? You're going to punch a hole in that right there. So it's already. You don't want to weaken it by thinning it. You just don't want to do that. Okay, so we're at a point now. We're ready to file that. So let's do a low a low red, let me find my little tongs. A low red, there they are over here. A low red cycle, which will, we call that a subcritical. And when you do that, you're keeping it below critical temperature, thus the subcritical, and it won't harden, but it will actually soften it. There we go. So I'm really looking at this right here. That's where I'm going to be putting the file to it. So it's got a little bit of a curve here. That's okay at this point. We're going to let that cool off where we can handle it. I'll take me a drink of water and I'll get it. It's okay. Neels, just relax. It'll be okay. Coffee? No, thanks. I thought that's what you said. No. This is good. This is good. Thank you. Sorry. I'm learning the language here. I know which direction it really is going, so don't think I don't know. Bull tongue. I got to learn how to say it. Okay. Let's see if I can get set up here. Now we want to just put that in there to where it's clearing that little 45-degree angle, and that standoff is kind of pointing straight up. And we're just gonna, I'm getting set because this thing's still pretty warm. It'll burn you to touch it right now, but in about 3 or 4 minutes it'll be fine. But I'm reaching, getting steady is what I'm doing, and I'm getting the corner of this file up in that. I'm leaving. I meant to make this point. When you finally get that thickness drawn out right there, you look at that thickness, and that's how far down your tenon goes. That's how deep your tenon goes. Maybe just a hair more. You know how it works with the mortise and tenon, or with a pin when you're peening it. You need just a hair more sticking up, but not much, because we're gonna bell shape that hole. You'll see that hole's going to be, the punch is tapered. And we're going to go in at the correct side, so that when we do slip it on there and we peen it, it fills that taper in and it's flush. So there we go, about like so. Once I get a track, that's that ringing right there, that tail's, it's cutting. I formerly had only drawn these out round, the tenon, and I figured out that you could, when you punch it square, you don't have near the filing to do. You don't have to worry about it too much, and it don't have to be exact.
We've lost the sound.
What do I do? Snag something?
I think the battery's
My battery's down. Sorry.
There's someone up there farting around on the switchboard, I think. Billy already looks a bit guilty.
Come up there. trying to help you out a little bit.
Pretend.
You're twisting my ears off.
Oh, there we go. Oh. Sorry, Billy.
Okay. Now we got it. Sorry, Neels. You just shouldn't have invited me. That's all I can say. It's your fault. I got to see that. Now I'm pushing down more because it needs to go down on this side, so I'm pushing more down than this way. I may be using the safe side. There we go. Thank you. That's beautiful. Okay. So, I think now we can look it over. Is it possible to see it there? Because I don't even know. Let's get closer to the... Oh, Lord. Can you see that? Okay. So now I know what size to punch right there. And incidentally, the tail, the beaver tail, the guard, finger guard now, it only needs to come down just a little past this, because if you come down way down here, guess what happens? It's in the way, you got to trim it off. Plus, you just shorten your whole handle. Okay, let's see. Kevin, would you help me punch a hole? Now, Kevin's done this, so he knows what to do. I want to, there we go. So if you'll hold, when it gets hot, if you'll hold it for me, I'll punch it. Is that okay?
Yep.
Jason? So we go down 2 or 3 times and then up once, and so we got a little almost like a nursery rhyme we go through to get it right. But you'll see that when you go through with the punch, we pull the punch out, flip it over, it leaves a little halo. We just hit that halo and it'll go right through. That's good. This is down first. You'll flip it over. There we go. Okay, so I'm right there. Okay, let's just go back and get it hot again. The plug is loose. It's just still in the hole. We'll do that same step just to kind of smooth it. Okay, good. So I just line it right up. Same thing this way. And we'll go right over to, let's move to this one. Still in there? Yep. Figured it'd fall out by now. The plug is cut. We just got to poke it out. Yeah. We'll just go from the opposite side this time. We'll just push it out. And the reason we want to finish up on that particular side is, again, because this is tapered. It's not very big, but it's there. It's tapered. Other way, flip it. There we go. There's the plug. I'm sorry, did I burn you? Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, the hole's plenty big. If you do a square one, you want it kind of, generally speaking, in line with the knife. You don't want to turn it on a 45 degree, and that'd be difficult to overcome. We're going to pre-bend the beaver tail. And we just go out to the end of the anvil and just kind of bring it over into something looking like that. And go back. We're going to now heat the middle of it and go back to the horn and just start the wrap and bring it around. We'll see if we can do it. It might take a couple or three times to get it to go right on. We'll see. You see where it's getting hot? That's where we want it, but we want the entire thing hot. The entire thing, because it'll flow much better. If it's just a short area that's hot, it'll just have a tight bend. We don't want that. Okay, here we go. Now we just bring it around, get close. It's a little long that way. So what you do when it's a little long, you just borrow a little bit more material from up here. Bring it back on around some more. You don't get in a hurry. You don't get in a rush. Right now that's too short. This is curled around a little bit past. So we're going to uncurl that some, just a little. So you have to heat that area nice and gentle, and we'll use the horn. So we'll just hang that down there and let that unwrap. We're just not hitting it hard. We don't want to forge. We just want to. Okay. Can you see how that it looks generally like it's aiming right to that? So we'll just lay it on over. But bear in mind that if we think we can just heat it right here and bend it down, it's going to spring back up. We got to heat that whole thing. It's got to be able to entirely wrap and stay. See where it snapped? It's in there. Okay. The best thing to do, I think, at this time is to go ahead and peen it. I want to show you how we do that using a very small hammer. I'm emphasizing the size of the hammer simply because if we're holding that in a vise, right there where we did earlier, and we're peening that, we use a big hammer, what's going to happen? It's going to just sort of wrinkle and collapse. So the depth of the blow is determined by the size of the hammer. So we were just working a little bitty tiny pinhead. So we just want to use a small hammer. Let's do one quick thing I want to do. And that's give this a little bit of a flip. If it don't come off. There we go. Okay, when I flipped it, it came off, but I want to show you something. This here is straight now. I don't want it to be straight. I want to get a little curve. What happens when we curve this section? What happens down here when we curve that over? It just pushes it right on. So I know that I'm going to bring this into a curve. It'll just set that right down where I want it to go. So knowing that, you don't want to get up here and struggle with it and pull and, you know, do any of this stuff like that, because you're just going to be fighting against it. So make it work for you. And that hammer's fine, because we're just going to be bumping it really light. See how that looks better? It went right on there. Now I'm going to just kind of grab it with these and straighten that up. That looks better. What I was looking at and adjusting was the squareness of that right there, that beaver tail. Now this is crooked, but I'm not worried about it. When you tie a knot in a rope, make a loop. Once you get that tied, that loop you can change any shape you want, right? Same with this. Once that's peened, we can adjust, we can straighten, we can just do all kinds of stuff because that's captured. It's caught. Okay, so we got to get flash. It's good. It's good. And here's the little hammer. Now that don't look like it's big enough to do anything, does it? But it will. It does just what we need it to do. We want it to get hot, but we want to start being careful of our heat now. Lowering our heat. We're just basically straightening from this point on. Another thing, the tongs that you use, I'm going to switch to these duckbill tongs because the box jaws are going to kind of keep me in line, and I want to be able to comfortably reach down and put that in the vise without any problems. So the fire's turned down, so we're good. Should be past much of a danger point. Okay. And we got to stay off that little 45 shoulder. We also want to turn that standoff and that pin straight up. And you see I'm just barely bumping it. turns black, you just stop. Okay, we'll do that. I'll flip that a little bit more because I probably hit it with a hammer, that little hammer. Use some of Heather's tongs. We'll paint that again, but we'll do it right after we make that little bit of an adjustment. See, it makes it look a little better, in my opinion. Now, cool things off. Fire's low, so we don't have to get in a hurry. We can be careful. Get everything ready, get our ducks in a row, right? Stuart likes it when I use animals to kind of illustrate the step-by-step processes. He seems to understand that better. Thank you. So the painting is done. You'll see that it's captured. The next thing is to straighten the thing out. It's crooked. See? See, it's crooked, so we'll fix that. So we'll use the edge of the anvil here, and just anywhere along here we see fit to just bump it and straight. It's not a problem. We're at a good, safe stage of the process. Okay, so I'm gonna, instead of messing with the other side, I'm just gonna lay that right there where it's in the clear. Straighten the spine of that just a little bit. That'll twist back into alignment. But it's best to just get prepared for each little thing you do. Keep your tools kind of handy. And you want to think about where you grip it. You don't want to grip it out on the tip of the blade and then start prying on it, because the tip of the blade's going to give before anything else, maybe, you know. So you want to reach up close to where we've got some mass and get where you can see it. And just simply line it up. And if it needs straightening that way, I'm sorry about the not holding it where you can see the camera very well, because I feel like I'm looking through that gap in the tongs, and it now the blade's a little bit crooked. No problem. If you'll notice, this sort of makes a corner, that angle, and then the beaver tail, it sort of makes a corner. So the corner of the face is a good place to just to hold that. You're staying off of all these other parts that are proud of the blade. And it's we're just straightening. It's not bad. Now, this is an interesting part. Let's talk about the the shape of it. Now, if we got a little bit of a hump right here, that's okay. If you like that, that's fine. It's fine with me, but sometimes I'll take a draw file or a file and I'll draw file that into a little bit more pleasing shape. I think for our purposes, though, it's good. But let's look at the size of this blade, the height and the height of this right here. Do you think that needs to narrow just a little bit? Everybody's shaking their head, yes, so it must. I agree, it does. So at this point, instead of trying to, going early in the process, going too small and trying to make it bigger, it's best to just leave it like that, and then at this point, we can narrow it down. It's a very simple matter of just bumping it, heating it up and bumping it. But I want to get all this done, all the straightening done before I do one final thing. And we'll go to the vise and we're going to reset that rivet using that round bar. We're going to put that round bar in there and just tap it with a small hammer. And it'll reset that and make sure everything's snug and tight. Because after all the bending and prying and twisting, the rivet may be just a tad loose. So when you finish the knife, you might feel a little bit of slack in there, a little bit of looseness. I don't like that. Okay, all we're doing is just simply this. Now that just wasn't much. I doubt that was a 1/16 of an inch. It might be, but you can see a difference. Does that look better? Help me, Kevin. What's a 3 millimeter? 1.6. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. That's what we do, though. We get down to the nitty gritty. All right. We're going to call that good, and we're going to go to the vise and set it, and we'll let it cool off. And I do one heat cycle just for the fun of it, because I like to relax the stresses that are in the piece. I got to find my 1/2-inch round bar. I see it. No problem. Here we go. And in this case, we don't want it to be, we just snug it a little, not too much. There you go. That's good. We're not in a big rush. We want to set that. I'm putting it right directly on the rivet, and I'm striking directly into the standoff. What that does is two things. It sets the rivet better, and it pushes the back of this curve into those square shoulders and makes it hot fit into a curve. So it's a custom fit. My buddy says a custom fit is where you cuss them till it fits. Now we kind of the vise got into that 45 just a little bit, but that's no problem. It'll be fine. We'll do one cycle and we'll look at it. I'm not going to come back up to anything near forging temperature right now. I just want to do a low red and relax the tensions in it. That's getting down there pretty low. That's good, Neels. That's good. That's what Kevin's was doing this week. We could turn it way down there and it just kind of simmer. And we lay that on a brick so that it won't be a heat sink so much. We overlap our heats. little shadow still in the blade. Mostly radiant heat that's in that forge now is what's going into the blade. It's just the flame is not doing much but keeping it lit. The radiant heat's what we're after, and there we go. We got a good heat. Now, that tip, this blade is probably longer than you or maybe even I thought it would go out. It's plenty long. We could raise the tip a little bit with a grind, or straighten that. We could do all kinds of things with this grind. And then when we could do that first and then thermocycle. And when you thermocycle, it blackens it back up, and you got a knife that's ready to grind. 2 bevels, harden it, draw it back, finish the bevels, put your logo in it, sharpen it, and you got a knife. Oh yeah, that's one thing that I need to mention. Yeah, I won't do it on this one though. Okay, see, we figured it was going to be slightly smaller because we started with smaller stock. You can go all the way down. I've made these things that long, just the entire thing, 3.5 inches long. You can just use a scrap piece. You got pieces that you normally throw in a bucket, set them aside, scale it down, whereas we were 1 inch by 1/4, 6 mil by 1 inch, 6 mil by 24 by 5 inches. If you got one, just scale it on down and you'll have a smaller blade. Do the same thing, 4/10, draw out the handle, use smaller round bars to do all these steps to get that standoff out there. Just scale your whole process down. Now you saw this one, and it's kind of got a black color to it, whereas this has got that forged more gray. Well, when this one was being drawn back in the oven after hardening, I put a little thin coat of linseed oil on it, and it just goes into that texture, and it just seats and sits there and just hardens up and turns black. Gives it a little protective finish. So in between the two drawbacks, you can smear a little of that on. You don't want to put too much, just a little bit on a towel, and wipe off the excess, and it'll blacken right up, make it look pretty. Okay, when this thing cools off, we'll be able to look at it. But if we have time, I'll grab me a drink and then forge that other blade. Oh, yeah. Now, I do a lot of hunting when it comes to using these small knives. I rabbit hunt in the U.S., rabbit hunt, deer hunt, and things like that. So it's real similar to, of course, here. But when you got that animal, especially a deer, strung up, and his legs are up here, and you're working those, and you get some hair on the meat, and you want to get it off there, you can just kind of hang that down there and pull and pick hair, and then just flip it back up and work some more. So it's real handy to hang up on a twig, a limb, and one of my buddies in Taiwan, he's actually got one with a curved blade, and he can do all kinds of gyrations with it. Martial arts, what it is, but it's gyrations to me. But he can really do it. But there's a lot of options. You can make these into a fillet knife. You can make a blunt, straight edge cutter. That's really nice for some things, leather and I don't know, working on animals and things like that. These can be adapted into bigger camp knives. I would definitely widen this part. So you start with more stock and widen it out. Work at high heats, widen it out. I've got some here to look at to show how that I've done that. This is also a one piece. I think the blade is 6.5 or so, but it has an additional lug on the top, but this is wider. I actually forged a butt cap into it, and beveled. It kind of rounded top and bottom so that whenever you're holding it, it just feels natural. And really my point of making one of these was to convince myself that I could make something that had the major points of contact between me and my hand and the knife. I had all the major points covered. And even though there's nothing right here, I didn't need that as much as I needed these other points. I need this, and this mostly, and not to be sharp and hurt my hand, right? And to be strong enough to feel strong, not feel weak, flimsy, or anything like that. So one of my goals was to make this sufficiently strong, but not overbuild it. Not overbuild it. If you think that you can take that and squish it, well, you can try it if you want to. But I assure you that even if you feel a little springiness, most of it's going to be in your bones, because it's not going to be in that metal very much. It won't be. It's strong enough. It's sufficiently strong. And another part of my goal was to have a transition length between the blade and this back strap, which is your primary spine, projection of your spine, to be a T-shape, I-beam sort of, T-beam, okay, if you will. So that you've got this covered as well as this, the strength. So it flows back, bracing things, and this part here is just merely to support the rest of it, to give your hand a good purchase down here, to brace against the rest of it, and it's not weak. So I encourage you to look it over. Sometimes I wish I could make two just alike, and I get pretty close, especially on the small ones. But the bigger ones, they're pretty well one of a kind. So don't be discouraged if you make one that's all crooked and you're not happy with the way it looks. But keep trying, and you'll get it. You make the adjustment in your process. But let's put that back in here, and I'll show you another example of a variation. And this is just the way, this is another one that is essentially the same thing. It's just got a sheath with it. And I wanted to show how the sheath is just like any other, it fits a sheath like any other knife. And you can actually, it works really well with a Kydex sheath. This is a two-piece. Some of you might have seen this one on the internet. It's on a calendar by Mareko Mamasi. Mareko wanted an example of this type of knife on his calendar because it's so different than anything else that he had on there. So he wanted an example. So this, of course, the blade, tang, and all these rivets and all are the same steel. That's 80 CRV2. Really, really close to 1080 or 1084. Thank you, Heather. We'll show that too. And this is just a strap of mild steel, and I forged it out and widened it in appropriate places and chamfered and rounded and so forth. But you do all that first before you put it on. So you draw this thing out. If you're going to make something like this, you need to draw it, because you're shooting in the dark if you don't. I'm talking about from literally where that angle and this angle slightly differs. And these are round and this one's square. It's diamond shaped. Yes, I turned that on a diamond, but I did that so that back end wouldn't tend to twist on the tang. So it's square. It locks it in back here, and it's got 3 points. So you're covered. You're basically covered. that is just another example of what can be done. And can you imagine this in a dagger? A dagger. Perfectly symmetrical, and this top handle. It would, to me, that would be the perfect pig knife. I mean, we hunt pigs back home, and that kind of thing is something I think about, how to use that. Be a great pig knife. There was one other thing I was going to bring out about that. What was it? How to figure out where the holes are when you're making that strap. If you decide to do this, the biggest obstacle you're going to have, the biggest question mark in your mind is how to figure out how to get those holes in the right place to begin with in the strap while it's straight. Because you got these curves to have to figure out. So I just take a piece of copper wire, like electrical, like in our part of the world, it's a number 10 or 12 or 14 gauge copper wire, something soft, something that'll hold its shape while you're messing with it. And I make one loop around that back, around that. This is finished. Now you got to remember this. The rest of this is shaped. It's the way you want it. Make one loop there. You got a long piece of copper going each way, just one loop, and it's coming both ways. Make your bends with some needle nose pliers or scrolling tongs where they need to be, and work all your curves through, and then make a loop there, make a loop there, and trim off all that excess stuff that's in your way. Get happy with the shape of that copper. And you're looking at it, and you're using your past experience on the knives that are this size. You're looking at the width of this pommel, the position of that, and all these things. You're getting all that right. Okay, when you're happy with that, you simply unfold it, straighten it out. Don't lose your loops. Keep them in there. That and then that one and that one. That's your guide for punching the holes. And as long as you don't reforge that thing after you get it forged and all your curves in, your butt cap spread out and everything, make it a little bit long. You'll trim it, grind it off or something. That'll tell you where to punch the holes. The center of those loops are the center of your hole. Okay, that's just something I wanted to share. That's easy to do. It's much easier than it sounds. There's another variation of a one-piece knife. Now, this is a push dagger, and you can make it, of course, with an actual center ridge or medial ridge dagger. This one, I put just a little bit of a clip on it, and I did a 1 and 3 instead of a 2 and 2, centered directly symmetrical. You know, I just experimenting with it, and I really like it. But to forge one of these, 1/4 inch or 6 mil by what did I say it was? 12, 6 by 12. And I just leave it on the bar, and I come in from the end, and I put me a slotted, I punch a slotted hole, a little bit from the end, and I start drifting, and then drawing it out over the horn until I'm completely happy with a nice round circle. It's 3 inches across, 3 inches this way, it's round, 3 inches in diameter, give or take. And then pinch this, and it's still round. Pinch this, forge the blade, get the blade done, heat that up, squish it down there where you think you want it, and you got it. So it's real. Make it wide enough to where it's comfortable, you know, this way. But you can look at these here in a few minutes. Okay, what time is it? 20 past 11. Okay, we got a few more minutes. I want to, well, okay, I do want to talk about one one other. Will we? Will we? Okay, good. All right. Let's, if it's okay, I will. Yes, I didn't bring anything that I didn't think, I didn't want to have to build two, so I brought things that were only for sale. I didn't bring any people's orders or anything like that. I couldn't afford to do that. So, yeah, these are for sale, just like I'm sure a lot of the guys, other guys got knives for sale that are here. So if you got any questions, let me know. But I really appreciate you guys showing such an interest in my little X-Rhea knife. It's really been an adventure just to come over here to South Africa and share it. I cannot believe the reception that I've had with it. And I thank you for being here. So I'm again want to wish everybody a good hammer in. And if there's anything I can do, any questions I can answer, just come up to me. I may not remember your name. You told me to begin with, but I'll be glad to hear it again. I've got some cards here. If you want to stay in touch, I'll give you a card. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if you decide you want to try to make some of these. But thanks again.
Thank you very much, Lin.
You bet.